Just set for the final race of the regular season at Daytona, but before we even get to that, let's talk about all the action at Watkins Glen. This has been a season of up and downs for William Byron, and historically, usually in the summer months, this is when that 24 team tends to struggle. Well, with this win at Watkins Glen, it sets a different tone for this team heading into the playoffs. This is the 5th win for the 24 team this season, and the 5th straight win for Hendrick Motorsports at Watkins Glen. This is also William Byron's first road course win, believe it or not, so a very good weekend overall for that 24 team. Not so much for the rest of Hendrick Motorsports. Let's get into our results, talking about that and our drivers that finished inside that top 10. First off, noting that all the Joe Gibbs Racing drivers finished inside the top 10. Ty Gibbs with a great finish in the 5th position. I think this is his second top 5 of his Cup Series career, so really solid and not surprising that it came at a road course. Now for AJ Allmendinger in the 4th position. We think of him as a road course ringer, but Kaulig has just struggled with their road course program this season, and I don't know what it is. They've just struggled. But this race, luckily, and just this whole weekend with practice and qualifying, Allmendinger actually topped the charts in practice. They have shown the speed that I think Kaulig needs to be showing. It is historically shown at the road courses, so great to see him finish within the top 5. I know he was hoping for a little bit more, as he is a driver who needs a win to get into the playoffs. This was his best chance to do it. Same thing with Chase Elliott, and we have to talk about this now because the race this weekend kind of sucked for him. I mean, practice and qualifying were not good for that 9 team. It's not at all what we expected. And then the race happened and he was working his way through the field, and then in the middle of the race, Chase Elliott ran out of gas. And this is where things kind of fell apart for his teammates, Alex Bowman and Kyle Larson. From my understanding with Chase Elliott and him running out of gas on track, it was a miscalculation and a miscommunication as to how many laps he actually had left once he flipped the switch for reserve fuel. The team thought he had 3 laps. That clearly was not the case. Of course, when that happened, he stalled out on track. He had to get pushed back to pit road. And again, with this caution, it kind of evened out the field a little bit. Drivers like Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney, who were kind of on the wrong side of the strategy or just were not running well, used this caution to their advantage to get track position, and they finished inside the top 10. A great day and a great day to salvage for most of Penske. Of course, Austin Cindric did not really have the best race, and I'm kind of disappointed with his road course runs. He's very solid at road course racing. He has it in his background. This year hasn't been it. And then for the rest of the Hendrick Motorsports drivers, if we're going back to that team, Alex Bowman, once he was pitting during that caution, he pit too soon, so that was to the rear for him. Same story with Chase Elliott, so that was a to the rear for him when the race got going again. And around that caution, when Kyle Larson was doing his pit stops, he had a speeding penalty, so that sent 3 of the Hendrick Motorsports drivers to the back of the pack. On a positive, William Byron won the race. Great for Hendrick Motorsports, great for his team. On a negative, their 3 other drivers did not have a great race. And Kyle Larson, to be fair, he was going to finish inside the top 20, which I know, considering the data that he had before the caution fell, he was going to finish inside the top 10, maybe contend for a top 5, but he tangled with Austin Dillon at the end of the race, which set them both finishing outside of that top 20 positions. And then for Michael McDowell, again, he led some laps during this race early on, and then it was penalty after penalty, and then a mechanical failure meant that Michael McDowell did not finish this race, which was so unfortunate because I truly thought they could have gone back to back with their wins. They had a very strong car, practice and qualifying and the start of the race, but I don't know if it was overconfidence that got this team or if it was just a comedy of errors for them, but it was so unfortunate because I thought they could have had a win this weekend at Watkins Glen. It just was not so. Luckily though, heading into Daytona, this is a track that is great for that team. They don't need another win right now, but of course that would help their cushion once they get into the first round of the playoffs, trying to advance their spot pretty quickly. So yeah, just a little interesting there though, but I mean, I guess speaking of the playoffs and the point situation there and kind of making that cushion, let's go into the point situation heading into Daytona. With William Byron's win, this means that Brad Keselowski and Kevin Harvick are locked into the playoffs on points alone. I know heading into this race, there were some nerves there, obviously. If either one of them won, that would have been a great situation for both of them. But they also needed a driver who's already won this season to win again to secure their spots. And luckily for them, that happened. On a negative for another driver, Bubba Wallace, he is now the only driver that is in on points. Everyone else below him is fighting just to win to get in. Luckily for Bubba Wallace, again, if we're playing the game of Pro pros and cons, Bubba is solid at Daytona. He is a great super speedway racer. Negative though, everyone behind him in line is just as hungry to get into the playoffs. So really for Bubba, the best situation is going to be, he's plus 32 to the good right now over the playoff line, right? But he has to be solid all day. No mistakes, no getting caught in other people's messes or calamity or anything like that. His best case scenario is just to go out there and win the race, which I think he's very capable of doing, or having a driver that has already won the season win the race. Again, the points gap though, it's still slim enough for somebody to overtake him, but I think he overall has a solid chance. I don't want to jinx him, but again, that's just the reality of going into Daytona when you're not securely into the playoffs right now, and that's not the best place to be in. Obviously, Chase Elliott, with him running out of gas and everything like that at Watkins Glen, he's going to have to win to get in, and you don't want to go into Daytona in that situation. Rookie Ty Gibbs, he had a chance to point his way in. Unfortunately, that's not the case for him. Even though he had a solid finish this weekend, he's going to have to race his way in. I don't know how he's going to do at Daytona. I think of other drivers too that could possibly have had the chance to point their way in, but no longer can, and they're going to have to win. AJ Allmendinger, he's solid at super speedways as well. So it's going to be an interesting race at Daytona to determine who our 16th driver is to get into the playoffs. It is a Saturday night race. I'm going to remind you at the end of this video, but it is a Saturday night race, so do not miss it because it is going to be intense. I'm probably going to feel really sick because I'm going to be nervous for these drivers, but it'll be a good one, I can guarantee you. For this race, I really don't think it deserves the hate that it's getting, but at the same time, the race at Watkins Glen this weekend just did not wow me, and I hate saying that because I love Watkins Glen. It's one of my favorite road courses on the schedule. It's produced the best racing, in my opinion, of any road course out of the schedule. But this race just did not do it for me, and I think a lot of it too, and a lot of you called it out, and I'm thinking the same thing, is that it just heightened the issues that we have right now with the short track and road course package. Granted, I know this is a conversation I think we have every week. NASCAR is working to make it better, but I think just the racing at Watkins Glen stuck out like a sore thumb to me, and just even contrasting it with the Indy road course that we had last week. I know we had some great storylines in there, but also the racing was intense. And I think, one, the race length for that race was perfect. It was under 3 hours. It was fantastic. And the players that we had at the front of the field, they could each contend with each other for the win, and they could pass each other and they could get close to each other. But just with the race that we had this weekend at Watkins Glen, there was not that same intensity. There was not that same fight for the win. It was really just not what I was hoping for Watkins Glen. It's a race I look forward to every year. It's always a sold out crowd, but I don't know. It was just a really odd, just kind of off race for the Glen. And granted too, this race was shorter. It was one of the shortest races in NASCAR history since I think I saw on Twitter 1971. It was under 2 hours. To me, I know I am a huge advocate for shorter racing, and I'm talking about maybe a race that's at the 2.5 hour mark, maybe 3 hour mark. I know a lot of you disagree with that. I read my social media comments, I know, but this race, in my opinion, might have been a little too short. But I also know online, I read a lot of comments saying that some of you fell asleep during the race, but then we're also complaining that the race was too short. We can't have either one, guys. It's the truth of it. But this race just felt off, and I can't pinpoint it exactly, but the length of the race is one thing. Adam Lucas also pointed out something else, and it had to do with track limits at Watkins Glen. And I'll read the quote from him, but I will say I do agree with his viewpoint on this, and I think that track limits at Watkins Glen and other road courses could be enforced a little bit more by NASCAR. I think it could make the racing a little bit more intense. So here's what Adam Lucas had to say. Today and overall this weekend, we witnessed drivers using the entire track to gain competitive advantage over the other drivers. This was disappointing to me. I am taken aback by how different you had to drive this track not very long ago by actually having to brake heavy and not mash the gas pedal exiting the corners. If you were just a bit off onto the rumble strips, you were losing time and sometimes your car. I would love to see NASCAR implement stricter track limits at their road courses, kind of what other international racing series do. We have track limits at super speedways, Daytona, Talladega, Atlanta. Why not at road courses, especially the Glen? It's worth a try in my opinion. So I'm curious to see if track limits at the road courses is something that NASCAR has on their radar for 2024. Every year I feel like NASCAR kind of reevaluates their rules, reevaluates the aero packages and everything that we have going on with these cars. Maybe this is something that they have on their radar, but honestly, I don't know. And maybe with this race, what would have made it better is if we did have another caution, but at the same time, I don't feel like this lack of stage breaks is what's hurting the racing at the road courses. I truly do feel it is just the package that we have right now with these Gen 7 cars. And with that said, again, this race just did not blow me away. I feel like maybe I should have rated this race the same as I should have other races this season that I was a little bit more forgiving on. This one I'm not going to be as forgiving on. I'm going to give this one a 45%, which makes it below the yellow line. I don't know if that's too low. I don't know if that's too high. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, but man, I'm just looking forward to whatever the Glen gives us next year, because this year I was kind of bummed, I'm not gonna lie. With that said, the stage is now set for the final race of the regular season at Daytona. I am so hyped for this race. It's going to be really intense. It's going to be chaotic, I can assume, but I'm also just wanting just good, solid, intense racing. So yeah, I hope these drivers are smart. I hope they are safe during the racing on Saturday night. Again, it is a Saturday night race at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock and NBC. Again, this is the final race of the regular season for the NASCAR Cup Series before they get into the playoffs to start that whole chase for the championship. So make sure to watch the race Saturday night, and of course for more NASCAR content. In the meantime, make sure to check out our social media channels, and we will be going live on Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm on the Toby Christie.com YouTube and Facebook pages. But y'all, that is it for this episode of Above the Yellow Line. Of course, my name is Taylor, and thank you all so much for the support, and until next time, I'll see ya. Bye. Want more great motorsports content? Make sure to click the links on the screen and in the description.